So I'd like to share some of my experience to help people with going through challenging times at the moment, through the depression and the anxiety and the fears that's permeating the world. And so I've spent about 10 years regularly every morning waking up 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and going into a meditation, which has been, it's almost like it's been fueled by fears that I was experiencing. So I would wake up in states of terror, in anxiety, like panic attacks, and I would then go into these meditations. And what came from that, or what has come from that, has been quite profound and incredibly healing, and has given me a completely new understanding of myself and the reality of this world. And so I wanted to be able to share this with you so that it can help you get through a stage which is extremely challenging at the moment for a lot of people, because a lot of people are in a state of fear and anxiety and confusion and in the unknown. And this is happening to us for a reason, because the world is going through, we as a human race are going through a major change, a cosmic awakening. And we want to be happy. You know, that is our goal, is to be happy. But all the time that we're creating, or we're miscreating through insane thinking, thoughts that just aren't true, thoughts that we've learnt, that we've taught ourselves. Well, all the time we're thinking, using our mind as instruments of fear instead of instruments of consciousness. We're creating a reality for ourselves which is closer to hell than it is to heaven. And this is why all our fears are coming to us so strongly at the moment, is so that we can transform this time of darkness in the world, in humanity and in the world, and step through this kind of period of challenge and into a new light of a new day, especially for our children and our children's children, because you know, the moment what we're doing is creating a hellish environment, and we're leaving our children a world that is more sick than it is healed. So these intense meditations that I've been going through over the years, and I do it every morning regularly, and it's not something I try and do or I force myself to do, it's just something that happens. I wake up, and often I have fears or doubts going through my mind, and so I go into a meditation, and I get to a point where I can see myself in reality, and it's not a reality that is physical, it's a spiritual reality, and I can see myself as a spiritual being in a spiritual reality with the spiritual laws that are for my protection and that are for my goodness. And I can see that it's for everybody else as well, because we are all the same. We are part of a oneness. We are part of a united humanity, and this what unites us as the sameness which is within all of us is really the meaning of God. You know, it's the sameness that is in all of us. It's the life that permeates this body, permeates this physical world, and it's this sameness that shares its mind with us. You know, we are part of a one mind. We don't all have, at the moment we all think we've got separate minds, but we actually don't. We're part of a united mind, one mind of a loving God. And all the time we're not seeing ourselves there, we're seeing ourselves in hell, or we're thinking of ourselves in hell, and that projecting out is giving us an experience that is more hellish than it is heavenly. So for myself, going into these meditations in the morning, it took a while for me to get there, but now I can reach that point quite effortlessly, and it comes regularly, you know, that I can see who I am, I can see the reality that I'm part of. I don't see it with my eyes, but I experience it inside myself, and that experience then creates my belief that that is actually true, and this body experience and this physical experience is more of an illusion than it is a reality. In fact, it's only a reflection of reality. It's not the wholeness of reality. And we can see this because the body is not able to see the full spectrum of light that is surrounding us. We cannot see everything. We cannot feel everything. We cannot hear everything. The body is a limit on this and filters out 99.999% of everything, and we experience just that tiny sliver, like a reflection on the surface. We don't see anything beyond it, and the body is very much like that. We see just the reflection on the surface, and everything we see around us, even the trees that we see, everything we're seeing, we're just seeing the surface, a molecular structure on the surface, reflecting back to us an external light. But the actual light of being is inside us, and it's inside our mind. And the mind is actually the most powerful instrument we have. The mind of God is creative, and when we are thinking like God thinks, we are creating heaven for ourselves. All the time we're thinking like evil thinks, or like the devil thinks. I'm not saying there is a devil, because evil is a state of mind. It's a state of unconsciousness. It's not a being. It's a state that we can be deceived by. We can think we are who we're not, and believe we are in hell when in fact we are created in heaven. So the moment we are seeing the world, which is much more hellish than it is heavenly, and so I want to just share why this is happening to us, because we are miscreating with our minds, and this miscreation is basically the meaning of deception, and it's all coming from deception. And anything that's deceptive is part of evil, because everything that is true is a part of reality. And if it's deceiving, or if it's an illusion, then it's obviously not part of reality, but it's part of an unreality. But all the time we're believing in the deception, we are being confused, because we're choosing to be confused. We actually don't realize it, but it is a choice. And so we're putting the power of our mind into creating a hellish state of being for ourselves. And this we can undo. All of these illusions and all this deception can be undone, because deception or illusion actually has no reality, and therefore it has no power, and therefore undoing it is not a difficult thing. It's like waking up. When you wake up, the dream is gone. Even though if you was in a nightmare within a dream, it's the moment you wake up, the dream has disappeared completely, or the deception of the dream has disappeared. So we have this ability to use our minds consciously and to see ourselves as we were created to be, not as the ego or the separate mind is deceiving us to be. We are not that. We are actually spiritual beings, and the life that is us is really the meaning of God. It's the God within us, that life that is permeating this, that is allowing me to speak and see and hear. That life is what we all share, and that's the similarity that's between us. And it's that mind that is creating this that we all share. All the time we're thinking of ourselves individually, and we're seeing ourselves apart from each other. We're not able to care for each other, because we don't actually believe that there's anything there that's unifying us. So we are able to hurt each other, because we do not see that there's a bond there, there's something there that's the same. But all the time we are hurting each other, in truth we're hurting ourselves. So in this way we can only ever heal together. We cannot heal apart. Now one of the mistakes that we're doing to ourselves is that we're giving authority outside ourselves. So we're projecting outside ourselves a power that is actually ours. It's our will and our choice. And when we are deceiving ourselves and we're giving power to an authority outside ourselves, we are being deceived by that power, because that power is in truth not there, because it does actually exist within us. It exists as the being of God that's in us, the power of God and the power of God's mind. Now, all the time we are looking out into the world and we are being controlled by the world, it is because we do not know who we are. We've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten that we are the creator of our reality. And by forgetting that, we are literally creating a dream for ourselves. And this is why we see ourselves as victims of the outside. And the body experience is very much an isolated experience of reality, that because everything outside us is so much bigger and more powerful than the body, we are always a victim of what is outside ourselves, because everything outside ourselves is going to kill us. And eventually the body will dissolve away and turn into nothingness and be consumed by everything else outside ourselves. But these meditations, they take you to that place within inside where you see that you're not the body, that you are actually a spiritual being, and that you're not actually even in the body, you're permeating the body. The body cannot contain the isolated mind, the tiny mind that is creating this body experience, cannot contain the soul or the spirit, because that was created eternal and is vast. And so it cannot be contained in this. It can permeate it, and it can give us this experience of a reality which is we are separate from. But it's like when you are dreaming, you're still the dreamer that's in the bed, even though you might be believing that you are an identity within the dream, and that dream could turn into a nightmare at any moment, but it could also be a happy dream. You're still never the identity in the dream. You're always the one who is dreaming, who doesn't actually exist within the dream. The dream is an illusion of an identity. But all the time we've lost ourselves in the dream, and we've forgotten who we are. We're miscreating, because the body experience is a fearful experience, because it is isolated and it is always weak. This is why the body dies, because ultimately it is an experience of weakness. You know, the totality of who we are is where strength is where power is. The isolated individual self is not that, and therefore it is weak, and therefore it is an illusion of the self. And like all illusions, they must all eventually fade away. They must all die. So by recognizing that we are not the body, and the reality that we're seeing is not the total of reality that we were created in, then once we see that we are not actually the body, and that the reality of the world is not what we think it is, it means we're no longer a victim of the world. We become the creator. We become the source of the power of our creation. And once this starts to happen, the reality around us starts to shift, and everything that comes to us is reflecting back to us the new beliefs that we carry about ourselves. And what happens is, because these beliefs are of a oneness and are of a unity, and they basically carry the thoughts of God for her children. We are those children, and all the time we are thinking like God thinks. We are creating a heaven for ourselves. But all the time we're thinking like the devil thinks, or like evil thinks, we're creating a hell for ourselves. Now we can see in the world that those who we see have authority are creating a hell for us, because they're thinking insanely. They're not thinking as a unified self. They are always thinking to protect themselves and defend themselves against loss. in whatever form that may be, whether it's power or money, whatever it is. It's always, the ego is always in fear of loss, because the ego is always in defense, and therefore the ego believes that its best defense is to attack, and therefore it always attacks through projecting outside itself, and wants to change everything else outside. But the truth is that it's inside ourselves that change must begin. And we don't have to change the world. In fact, all the time we're trying to change the world, we're not recognizing that the power is within us to change the world. And we're still under the influence of the ego, trying to change what is impossible to change, because we are creating the world in a hellish state of being. It's not the world that must change, it's just us that must change. And what changes in us is but our thoughts. And where are thoughts but in the mind? And thoughts never leave the mind. So where do we approach all the problems that we see in the world but in the mind? And to recognize that our thoughts are creating the hellish reality. And so authority is really one of our main problems in the world, is that we're given authority outside ourselves, and we're allowing others who are thinking insanely to have power over us. And this is really the deception of policing and armies and wars, the deception of governments, and the deception of even the monetary system and the commerce. We're all believing that the power is in the money, or is in the possessions, or is in what we have. But actually the power is in the unifying self, that once that is recognized, the whole universe becomes ours, becomes part of who we are. And therefore we create a loving universe for ourselves, we create a loving world for ourselves, and we experience that, we see that, and we become more caring, and we become more grateful, and we become more loving, and we become more loving towards each other. And this is where creation begins. At the moment we're not creating, we are miscreating. And because we're miscreating, we're creating through deception, and we are creating a hell. And because it is an illusion and a dreamscape, and it has no reality apart from the reality that we are giving to it, which is that it's the deception. It has no power. So once we change our beliefs about ourselves, because we see something which we didn't see before, we see a reality about ourselves which is not physicalness, that is not fixed in this solidity, but is actually spiritual. And what is the mind? It's but a part of spirit. Mind and life go together. They do not separate. Where there's mind, there's life. And where there's life, there's mind. The mind is the instrument of creation. And we are born to create. We were created to create. This is why in the Bible it says we're born in the image of God. Because we are born to create. But we are miscreating, because we're seeing ourselves as bodies, we're seeing ourselves as victims, and we're seeing ourselves as lacking, because basically everything in the outside of us we are lacking. So we're always trying to get what's outside of us, but actually the whole meaning of abundance lies within us. And then once we connect to that, we have everything comes to us effortlessly. We don't have to work. We don't have to go out and make money. We don't have to do any of these things. It all just comes to us because it was given to us. Everything is already there. The thing we think we've got to make something to have it, but it's already there. It's already existing. We just have to want it. And if we're thinking like God thinks, then it comes to us effortlessly. But all the time we're thinking like the devil thinks, or like evil thinks, then we're asking for what is actually going to hurt us, because we're asking for abundance, or we're asking for safety, or we're asking for healing where it doesn't actually exist. We're looking outside for these things. We're looking for healing from outside. We're looking for God outside ourselves. We're looking for the money and the power and the security from outside ourselves. But the truth is, it's all inside. It's all within us. And I don't mean inside the physical. I mean it's inside the mind, actually. And it's where the mind becomes pure and innocent because it recognizes itself as basically the Son of God. And the Son doesn't mean Son as in male, female. The Son really means light. So once we recognize that we are the light in God's mind and we think like God thinks, we start to create a world of abundance and absolute beauty, because you've only got to look around at what God creates in nature, and it is absolutely beautiful and harmonious and perfect and intelligent. We're not creating that. We're miscreating. We're creating noise and disharmony. We're creating poverty. We're creating hardships for ourselves. And this wasn't why we came here. We actually came here to undo that. We came here to undo an insane belief about ourselves. But all the time we think insanely, we can miscreate for a very long time. Life after life after life after life, we can miscreate in hell. But that is not making us happy. So we're being squeezed at this time. We're being squeezed to look beyond what we made in deception, and to look at actually what is the truth of who we are. These fears, they push us to look within. So anyone who's suffering fear or suffering anxiety or suffering depression, psychosis, panic attacks, all these kind of things, anyone who feels like they're being attacked or who is needing to attack, if you take that fear and you look at it truthfully inside yourself, rather than running away from it, trying to push it out, trying to hide from it by changing the outside, if you sit and you meditate within that fear in your mind and you just ask for the truth, eventually you will start letting go of all the lessons that you learned, that humanity has taught itself, all the laws and the rules and all the things that actually aren't true. We start to see that they actually don't make sense, they're not reasonable, they're not serving us, and therefore we start to lose our beliefs in them. And then by stopping believing in them, they start to lose their hold on us, and eventually they start to disappear. And as that starts to happen, an unfolding happens, or a wisdom starts to come into us. It's like you've got to empty a cup before it can be filled. A cup that's already full, you cannot put anything else into it. And our minds all the time, they're thinking insanely, they're completely believing in these insane beliefs about ourselves, these misconceptions about ourselves. So we have to undo all of that. We have to unlearn. So basically all this stuff that we've learned through our education system and through our, all the authority that we've given outside ourselves, all that we have to unlearn and realize that it's not serving us, and stop believing in it. And then by not believing in it, the outside starts to reflect back what actually is coming now into our mind, which is a loving, creative healing. And that starts to create a world around us that is beautiful and harmonious and abundant. One of the things for myself that has pushed me deeply into the fears is that I stopped working 20 years ago. And it wasn't necessarily it was a choice, but I didn't realize what it was going to lead to. But I kept listening to this voice inside myself, that every time this fear of not having enough money, and I have a family and I have a daughter, and all this time this fear of not having enough money, and we're going to suffer, or we're going to be left poor, we're going to be destitute. Every time these fears came into my mind, the first reaction was go and get a job, go and get busy, get working. But this voice kept telling me, don't do that. Go into the fear. Just go into the fear. And I did. And I kept going into the fear. And I kept going into the fear. And the fears became more and more intense until eventually, for a couple of years, I felt like I was losing my mind. I was completely insane. I was in such a hellish state of being inside. From the outside, I might have looked normal, but inside myself, I was suffering deepish, hellish, insane thoughts about myself. But this voice kept saying to me, keep going into the fear, keep going into the fear, keep going into the fear. And it made sense, because I knew that if I went and just got busy and got into a job and started trying to earn money and all these things, I knew that if I believed that was the answer, then I did not believe in the voice that was speaking for God inside me. And so I knew that I trusted the voice inside me, because what it spoke was so beautiful and so pure and so loving and so understandable, that I knew that being busy and working and getting stressed and anxious for work and money and all the craziness and the taxes and the laws and all the all these kind of things, and I knew that was not going to be the answer, because I knew that the minute I did that, or I believed that was the answer, that was going to stop the suffering or stop the fear, I knew that I would have lost. I would have been lost then, because I would now not have trusted basically God, and I would have put my trust in that, and I would have left myself poor because of it. So it was a very challenging process. I was spending a lot of time going through depression and fear and anxiety, and these morning meditations actually became more and more sharp and more honed, to the point where I was easily accessing a place inside myself where I could see that I wasn't the body. I could see myself in a reality that was not physical, and I could understand, and therefore I could believe that everything I was being shown was true. And over a period of 20 years, I still not worked. I still don't have a job. I have a wife who doesn't work, and she hasn't worked since we've been together 20 years. We have a daughter, we have a beautiful home, we travel, and all these things just keep coming to us, and we don't have to work for it. We don't have to do anything, actually. Everything we ask for comes to us, and it comes to us in the most beautiful way, and there's no stress and there's no anxiety. If we think about the money is just a belief. It's just the piece of paper or something. In fact, 99% of all money, or 95% of all money, is actually digital. It's not even physical. It's it's a dot on a computer. It's a 0 or a 1. It doesn't even exist. So money and the power that money has is really just a belief. Now, all the time that we're believing that money is the answer, or work is the answer, or status is the answer, we are being confused. We're deceiving ourselves, and that deception is that we will see ourselves in hell, and that is what we're going through. We've had thousands of years of insane deception, a lot of it coming from authority. You've only got to look at the hatred and the violence and the police force and the armies and the wars and the borders that surround nations, and the defences and the attacks. All of this is coming from insane authority that we've given away outside ourselves. We've given it over to basically another who thinks insanely, and we're suffering that. Our children are suffering. The suicide rates of our children is going through the roof. We're living in an environment that we've created for ourselves that is not healthy. It's leading to our destruction. So what I want to say is, anyone who's suffering, and we're all suffering at different levels, we're all seeing the change is happening. A change is happening in the world at the moment, and no matter where we are, we're all being affected by it. Um, Now, if we keep projecting outside and we keep looking outside for answers, and we keep looking, or we look at the body and we think, let's save the body, let me save the body, let me heal the body, all of these are about projections of the egoic mind, the separate mind that's saying, don't look inside. Don't look inside, because to the ego, the greatest fear of the ego is to look inside. Because if you look inside, you would literally see that the ego is an illusion and that we're not separate, that we are all part of each other, and therefore everything the ego is doing to defend itself and carelessly hurting other people and carelessly hurting the planet and carelessly hurting animals and all these things, you would literally see that if you looked inside yourself, all of that is part of a hellish landscape, and it's part of what the devil means, and it's part of evil. And even, you can even look at the justice system. Look at the word justice, it means fairness. But if you look at the justice system, which is where our legal system lies, it means vengeance, it means attack, it means defense, it means torture, and imprisonment and fines are forms of torture. It means shame, it means guilt. Now, none of this is the meaning of justice. Justice means fairness, and in heaven, in a state, in thinking like God thinks, heaven is a state of justice because it is fair to everybody. Everything was given to everybody, and we are the creators in heaven. But all the time we are isolated and we're not sharing and we're not giving freely of everything. We are creating a hell for ourselves, and this is our poverty. This is what we're suffering. So yeah, it's an incredibly profound journey, super challenging. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it is so super challenging. But once you start the journey, the help comes to you. The help is so much more powerful than the deception. The truth is so much more powerful than the lies. All lies, all deception have no power, because all lies and deception and illusions disappear in the light of truth. So truth is where power lies, and that is in the mind of God. And if we think like God thinks, I'm not saying that God's a body or a being that is, outside of us. I'm saying it's inside. And if we learn to think like God thinks, we will see such a major transformation in our lives and in our world. We will leave this world a blessing instead of a curse. At the moment, we're creating curses for ourselves. And we can undo all of this by going inside and seeing who we are inside. Ultimately asking the first ever question that was ever asked when we decided to separate ourselves into bodies, which was, who am I? That question, once that is answered, every problem that we can ever experience in the world is answered immediately, because all the problems that we see in the world are answered inside ourselves, because they're all coming from our miscreations, all our problems, which are endless. We're going to constantly go from one problem to another, to another, to another, because they're all coming from miscreations. They're not coming from the mind of God, they're literally coming from the mind of evil. And all the time we are thinking insane thoughts about ourselves, and that is why we're suffering. So to change our reality, to change I wouldn't say change our reality, well, yes, to change our experience of reality, of this world, it is all done inside ourselves, and the journey is profoundly beautiful, and the visions that come, and the changing beliefs, and how we, the mind just explodes open into the universe, into the mind of God, and we see ourselves as divine beings, which is really the meaning of Christ. We are part of that oneness. There is one, the Bible, or the Christian teachings are the Son of God. Now, Son means light. It's not a male-female thing. We are that light. We are, even in the Bible, it speaks about Lucifer. Lucifer is the angel of light. The fact that he's fallen asleep into darkness is where dreams and illusions are made. That's what we've done. That's really the story of the Garden of Eden. We are in that space at the moment of not knowing. We are in that space of darkness where, as beings of light, we've fallen asleep. Now, do we want to continue creating a hell, and suffering what we are, or I wouldn't say creating, miscreating? Do we want to continue miscreating a hell for ourselves and for our children and for everybody else? Or do we choose to become the beings of light that we were created to be, and we still are? That is still who we are. We haven't changed reality by thinking insanely. We've just changed how our experience is, and we can change that inside ourselves. Everything happens within us. If you think about everything that we see and hear and touch and feel from the body experience, it's all happening inside us within our minds. It's there that the gem lies, because the mind and spirit, or the mind and life, is a oneness. And it's that power that gives us the ability to create everything we see around us. And when we're miscreating, we are miscreating and making a hell for ourselves. When we think like a divine creator who is our creator, when we think the same thoughts as he would share with us, because he knows us, he knows who we are, even though we've forgotten, we are still there within his being. We're still there within his mind. We haven't left that. We've fallen asleep. So if we learn to think like God thinks, we literally create a heaven for ourselves, even though we're in the physical body. The body can then become a temple instead of an idol worship, which is what the ego does. The ego worships the idol and loves all the illusions about the self, and worships all the illusions about the self, and tries to make the body what it's not. If we really think about it, the body is but chemicals and minerals and water and fats and acids, and this is why we don't see in the body. We don't see in the body because actually the body is frightening. If anyone tore the body apart, we would be horrified. If you had your body torn apart and opened up, it would terrify us. If we saw that in our child, in our own children, we would literally, think we was in hell. And I've experienced this. I've seen my child not torn apart, but I've seen her going, I thought she was going to die. And it was such a terrifying experience. And what came into my mind when I was deeply in this fear was that I actually saw her as she truly is, outside of the body, beyond the body. And I saw her in the light of her true being. And everything changed for me. And all the fears disappeared. And my daughter actually got better again. I'm not saying it was because of what I achieved inside myself, but I do believe there was some kind of relationship there. Something happened. So, even if we look at the body, it's not what we think it is. We can make it as a temple. Absolutely, it can be used as a temple, but it can also be used by the ego. And the ego loves the body. The ego has made the body its home. And if we are lost within the belief that we are that body, then we're thinking like the ego thinks, and we are thinking like the devil thinks, and therefore we're creating a hell for ourselves. To think like God thinks is to recognize that the body can be used as a temple, and what is valuable about the temple is not the structure of the temple, but it's what's at the heart of the altar. It's what is that is valuable. It is the life itself, and that is within all of us. And all the time we're attacking and hurting others or anything that has life, all the time we're careless outside of that, we're thinking insanely, and we're hurting ourselves, and we are going to experience that. So this is an undoing process we're going through at the moment, to learning to undo all the insane beliefs that we've been taught since we were born, through the education system, through history, Look at all the things that we've been taught about ourselves, even all the laws. They all need to be undone. They're all insane. They're all attacks. They're all defenses. They're all punishments. They're all restrictions on freedom. They're all made by authorities outside ourselves. They're not the laws of God, because the law of God is love, and the law of love is literally do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Because at the end of the day, everyone is created in love, within the loving mind of a loving creator in an incredible universe that if we become expanded out of this body into the universe, we don't lose, we gain. It is a loss to be stuck in this tiny, tiny, tiny little experience of a body. But the minute we realize that we're not the body, consciousness expands out into the universe, and it's not a loss. Death of the body is not a loss. Death of the body is an expansion into the universe. It's a gain in the whole universe, and gain in the mind of a loving creator. That is not loss. That is a massive, massive gain. So, I want to just share some of these experiences that have come about through these meditations, and going into the fear. So instead of running away from the fear, instead of going and get busy, instead of trying to find a job, instead of thinking that money's going to come to you through working, it's just not true. It's all going to come to you. Everything you need is going to come to you because it's already there in creation. It was already created already. There is nothing that doesn't exist already. And it was already given to us because we were given heaven as our creation. In fact, we are heaven. It is us that is heaven, But at the moment when we're thinking insanely about ourselves, and we're miscreating, and that we can undo. We can undo it inside ourselves and experience a world outside ourselves that is completely different than the one we're making at the moment. And it will happen. It will happen because it has to happen. Because it is not the mind of a loving creator to see his children or to see his creations in hell. It is the mind of a loving creator that heals. It is the mind of a loving creator that frees us. It is the mind of a loving creator that gives us abundance, that gives us joy. The minute we see ourselves as part of that, we have nothing but gratitude, and we have nothing but happiness with it. And this is the state of the being that is coming now. This is what's coming in. This madness of the past, this killing and laws made over us, and authority figures controlling everything, the insanity that's happening in this world is all going to be undone.